influencer marketing in times of COVID. And we've got an expert from the industry. Nitin has joined us, and Nitin runs an agency called Viragram, and he'll probably talk more about what these guys do and how he's kind of mastered the art of influencer marketing and helped multiple brands across the nation and globally in scaling up their business. So the objective of today's session will probably open up with Nitin giving a quick perspective what influencer marketing is and how to go about doing it, and then we'll probably open it to specific questions. I have few questions for Nitin tonight, and then probably open it for the larger folks, who people who are on the call to actually talk about what kind of help they are looking when it comes to influencer marketing, where to start, and so on and so forth. So welcome, very warm welcome, Nitin, and thank you so much on behalf of Turning Ideas and Wisdom. Now I request Ambika to give a quick overview or introduction. I think we have few people new on the call today. If you can quickly run them through what Wisdom is all about and how can they get some help from Wisdom.
Absolutely, Ashish. Welcome to the series session. Yeah, absolutely. So I think as Ashish just mentioned, the startup series has been a part of Wisdom Club and what it stands for. So just to give a brief introduction, Wisdom Club is actually a co-working space. It's in GK2, in the heart of South Delhi, and it launched in August. So it's a fairly new proposition in the market. And as you know, given the current situation, we're not able to host these sessions in the club premises, but typically that's where these sessions are hosted, and we have a much larger community engagement activity through Startup Series. And going forward, also, as soon as we can open the club, we'll continue to have such events over there. Apart from that, I'd also like to highlight that why Wisdom Club does such startup series or such events is because we're more than just a typical co-working space. We just don't offer there's spaces. There's more to it. We offer a lot of mentorship, incubation. We have a cafe space also called Wiz Cafe. So it's a proposition which entails various things and various activities, and people can come in for what they like, and that's always been the idea behind it. And we also believe that the learning should never stop, and that's why we've taken the startup series on an online platform now, and we've been doing these webinars with our existing community, and broadening our reach to other people as well. So thank you for joining in, and hopefully we can see you soon at the club once it does open up.
Thanks, Ambika. Thank you so much for that introduction. So, over to Nitin, who is the expert tonight. So, Nitin, can I request you for a quick introduction, and post that if you can just jump over to what we're going to present today.
Sure, sure. Thank you so much, Ashish, for this opportunity to connect with the audience. And it's all my pleasure to kind of give them a quick insight as to what the scenarios have transformed into. And before that, before we dive into that, I think I'm going to allow myself a quick introduction. Uh, this is uh, this is us, Viragram Media, and we are in the business of storytelling and allowing a perspective that the brand does want to communicate, but not through themselves. It's an angle that is a narrative. It's a narrative that a brand takes through a third person, because that is where the advocacy uh, tends to become more believable, because a third person's word is always taken much more seriously than the brand themselves, because that's when it becomes the advertising outrightly. So that if I could give you guys a perspective as to what an advertising and influencer marketing in general differs from itself, advertising is, in a layman's perspective rather, advertising is purely when I claim and bash up about myself, or rather, in a more simpler manner, when I claim myself to be the best on the planet. That's called advertising. And when a third person in the same room or in the different house talks about us or you, that is where influencer marketing, or rather, we could say a PR, a public relation context comes into play. So to talk about myself a bit more, I would like to give you guys a perspective that we've been doing this for almost a good bunch of years. And my background has essentially been in public relations from my education perspective, and my past business experiences has been majorly into consulting brands all over the world, and we have been successfully doing that over years. And Ashish is a good friend. We kind of gelled up for over a bunch of years already, and this is a great opportunity for me to open up my bunch of insights, information, and rather knowledge perspective point of view, that I'm able to share this in my own entire capacity tonight. And I would really be excited if you guys have as many questions for me, because uh, this line of business has suddenly gotten a new a benchmark as to not just why we should do it, instead why we should not do it. So we would get deeper into the subject as we go, introducing what is influencer marketing. I think most of us on the call do understand the subject, but we would still, for the benefit of the audience, we will touch upon on the basics of what influencer marketing essentially does, entails about. And then we go deeper into how it is being done and what all platforms are happening and what all industries, in fact, have been leveraging on this subject for the longest time. And then we talk about how we are going to be prepared once the lockdown is going to be lifted, and how do we uh, essentially get ourselves aligned to that scenario. So the reality as of now today, what we understand is majorly in a crisis like this, a lot of brands are in panic as to, if I could give you a perspective, a lot of events actually have gotten cancelled. A lot of launch that the brands have had wanted to do for their brand, multiple line of products have gotten stuck in the manufacturing units, in the transit, and how do they prepare themselves and how do they mobilize their upcoming brand and corporation activities. We will go deeper into it and also understand how could we prepare ourselves and prep up for the times ahead.
So, Nitin, why don't you actually start with introducing what is influencer marketing and why it is important for brands, especially in these times of COVID? So maybe you want to use the presentation or you want to have a discussion. I kind of leave it to you, Nat.
Sure, absolutely, Ashish. So internally, after this webinar was set up at Viragram Media, we did a dipstick research with 1,000 bunch of people across internet in India, and we had some really cool insights to share with you on the call. And why does it matter for brands much more than previously? Before we go into the subject, why and what, I would like to quickly give you a perspective that there are a lot of brands who have done influencer marketing in past, and they seem to kind of give up on the idea for certain reasons that did not work for them. A few of the points I would like to touch upon as we go deeper into the presentation. But what I would like to emphasize on right now is that whatever you've done in past does not validate right now, because times have changed, the patterns have changed, consumer behaviors are changing over time rapidly. And in the times of COVID, a lot of content creators have actually transformed themselves as to what is relevant, because sending pictures or sending videos on their audience demographic, what they were receiving earlier is no more relevant, because people are at home and they do not want to see their travel pictures or their food pictures anymore. They want to see something relevant, which is quite contextual in the current time. So let's just start. I think we will definitely talk about everything that requires to be done. As per our perspective, our research, we have solid data points to bring in forth to our audience. And in that due course of time, first of all, thank you so much for being on the line, everyone. And it's my pleasure to bring it to you guys what exactly the subject that we are dealing with. And so, influencer marketing, like, I'm just going to keep it super simple for us to even move forward quick on the subject. I
Can you,
hope
can you,
I.
uh, can you change the charts also? I think your presentation is not moving. So,
All right, all right, all right. So that's a little bit of about ourselves, and
yeah, I think.
that's what we do. Okay. So,
So if we can come to the what influencer marketing is, that'll be nice.
yes, 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 coming right there. So, so everyone, influencer marketing is not a thing that has happened suddenly around us. In fact, this has been happening for years, as we could know. Biggest of the biggest stars, they have been endorsing brands over years, and the way we used to look at it is was purely from a brand endorsement perspective. But here is a new leg of, expression that has allowed us to become accessible not through a brand's narrative, but instead a third person who has a trusted audience and is subtly injecting and integrating a subtle message subconsciously into their audience that this is what I do, this is what my lifestyle is, and this is what I prefer to uh, become. I mean, this is what I prefer to introduce it to my lifestyle. And look, people believe people, and as we understand that the high likely chances of any brand wanting to reach out and make a connect with their audience can only happen through people. And brands have become very very conscious of this in the last 5 to 10 years, because the advent of internet has allowed, not just through Facebook. In fact, I would say, there are certain platforms that have suddenly become super prominent in the brand portfolio of the choice of platforms that they like to bring into their audience. Is YouTube is one of the very most popular platforms that the brands have chosen to use as a medium to communicate with their consumers. Because if you understand, uh, in the recent time, the internet penetration with our consumer perspective has seriously, taken a big incremental uh, touch up on how we live our life. Our consumer mind definitely wants to understand what the other person is doing, because a lot of the times we might have noticed that we tend to take our decisions based on what my friend is doing, what my neighbor is doing, and what sometimes, where I go for my hairstyle, or the kind of fashion accessories do I take up. A lot of these influence actually happen from people around us. So brands have understood that influencer marketing is definitely the way forward. And let me also tell you that the amount of investment in percentage has has significantly grown over time. Uh, the brands have realized that this is working. And for the brands who do not realize that this is not working are the ones who are just doing it for the night. I mean, all I need to say is that this is a consistent activity that one need to take up, not just for a fortnight campaign. This is something that you need to consistently keep it up and going for a minimum of 6 months. That's what my recommendation is, because anything less than that duration is not going to give you any cash back on your investment with influencers. And let's just also understand that your audience has to be identified. Like, there are a bunch of streamers now of it, who do gaming. People who play PUBG have been streaming on Twitch, on Nemo, on Nono Live, and there are a bunch of other streaming platforms that have allowed brands to integrate. Like, let's say, for example, if I'm right now streaming and playing PUBG right now, I could very well place a bottle of, let's say, a Red Bull right next to me on my screen, and to all the audiences that have been, glued on my screen, they could just very well understand that Red Bull is my choice of drink, and that what keeps me going, and that's what keeps me up to play all night. So these are the subtle injections that the brands have taken up to introduce it to their audience in a very subconscious manner, because subconscious mind is the most active mind, and the more we calibrate from a branding perspective, it definitely shapes up the consumer behavior. And over the time, we've noticed that the short video stories, and there's a lot of brands who've been doing it very smartly. If I tell you, they keep it very subtle, and they keep it super quick to make or leave a very subtle decision making ability to their consumers right in the moment. And it takes some time to grow that decision making ability in the consumer's head, but it has to be a consistent affair. So let me give you a perspective as to how influencer marketing has become such an important tool to the brands in general, is because over the years, we've noticed that outdoor newspaper and TV and a lot of other types of media modules have actually been the top spenders in the budgets that brand actually assigned for themselves. Over the last few years, what you've noticed that the ROI that the brands have leveraged upon using influencer marketing has been fairly uh, convincing for them, that it's better that we try this out. And once they try it out, they see the results, and eventually what happens is that a percentage that they never imagined is what they are now dedicating to the subject. So let me give you a perspective in numbers. So earlier there used to be a demarcation of approximately 1 to 2% of the entire marketing budget that the brand used to just give it a try on influencer marketing. Instead, now it has gone up to 5%. And as we understand, the times have changed, and influencer marketing is shaping up because the bunch of creators around us have significantly grown over time, not just in YouTube, not just on Instagram, but on Pinterest instead. Pinterest is one of the very, very fastly growing, platform, as we understand. Alongside, we have TikTok. TikTok has, as of now, 150 million active users in India, and a lot of brands have been subtly, injecting their messages. Let me just give you a quick example, guys.
Before I have one question there. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
Nitin, one of the thought which typically comes, and I think sure audience would also have a similar question, saying that is my brand or service ready for influencer marketing? One, and two, basically, can I, considering there are multiple marketing tactics and when it comes to digital, starting from organic traffic to optimizing my search engines, to my paid traffic, to SEO, SMO, so pretty much every bit of it. Now we have another ticket around the influencer marketing. So how does someone arrive saying that is whether my product or service is influencer market right fit for me? One. And a follow-on question would be, typically, how do I start? How do I identify the first set of influencers for my product or service and move forward?
Okay. That's a very, very interesting question, Ashish. So just to give a very quick answer to that, I think there are. I'm just going to bullet it out for all of us. When do you believe yourself to be ready to take up the subject? So from a brand perspective, first of all, you need to figure out your supply and chain. If you're out there in the market, are you ready to service your brand? Number one, do you have enough consumers who can readily give you user-generated content? Because anybody who is already using your content is worthy enough to put it out there and start using it to develop some sense of credibility about yourself, because that is when the audience who you are targeting understands that there are real people who are already using my brand. So coming back to your question, I would like to suggest number one is your supply chain and your brand presence. Once you invite people on your hashtags, on your brand mention, you got to be prepared as a brand. I mean, If you have just launched your brand and you have just one picture on your Instagram, that is not what I would recommend. That is the right time to activate influencer marketing. You got to have a fair, legit landing pages ready for your consumers to be experiencing your brand vocabulary, because until that is not ready, it is not advisable to propagate yourself through a third person, because anybody, let's understand this, today influencers have a choice to reject a brand as well, because there are tons of offers coming their way, and they themselves hold responsibility to endorse whatever there is, they stand by and talk about a brand. So the step one is your influencer relevant? Is it very much uh, is it matching up to your audience geographically, or is it matching up to the categories that they kind of cater to? And secondly, are you ready yourself? If as a brand you're ready to out task your brand to a much larger audience that does not belong to you. Because understand this, guys, whosoever influencer you hire to propagate or advocate your brand has to be working with a ready brand. A ready brand means somebody who has their business collaterals, their business decks, their supply chain in place, their social handles in place, a very consistent communication in terms of how they talk to their audience on the global digital space. Because understand one thing, guys, once an influencer talks about you, you are just not limited to a geographic that the audience of that particular influencer is limited. Influencer is putting out a content outrightly to practically everybody on the planet. So if you are uh, using an influencer to talk about yourself, you must be prepared, ready yourself first. Ashish, if that has answered your question, I could go long and long, much deeper into it.
Yes. Now, I think it did answer. So basically, a follow-on question again, and we have multiple portfolio investments in startup space, especially
Mm-hmm.
for startups,
Mm-hmm.
and especially in these times of COVID-19. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the startups have come back saying that we believe that spending or burning money on other channels versus influencer market is going to be more beneficial in terms of returns, especially in
Mm-hmm.
these times of COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
Your thoughts around that? Why do you think, if you also experienced something similar, and why
Mm-hmm.
do you think that's going to be more cost-effective digital marketing channel versus a standard pay-per-click or Facebook
Sure.
ads or Insta ads?
Sure. So first of all, we need to understand how does consumers are actually in the current times consuming content. OTT, or over-the-top platforms, which is your Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Hotstars, have actually seen significant amount of surge in the way consumers are using these, because everybody is sitting at home. And let's also understand this, that uh, in the current times, everybody's indoors, everybody's sitting at home. So there are certain touch points that brands generally in the most traditional manner use. One is outdoor. So outdoor is one thing that takes up the highest chunk of marketing budget. So what we understand from that is that it can definitely be diverted to some uh, alternative options, which could possibly be considered as influencer marketing avenue to invest or divert their cash reserves as their brand budget. Instead, a newspaper is one of the another expensive opportunity that a brand takes up to advertise themselves. So first of all, brands have been becoming very clear that advertising currently using your ads and XYZ, even digital ads for all we know, like Facebook ads, Google ads, all of them have become redundant for a reason that the consumers have become very smart. They use ad blockers. Let's understand that ad blockers have become a very big lifestyle change in the internet consumers. Nobody wants to see an ad. Let's understand this first of all. Everybody sitting at home right now is consuming a massive amount of content right now. and there's a high likely chances that the influencers that they used to follow or look up to, they do not do anymore, because there are some influencers who haven't woken up or risen to the game as to what is required at the moment. Because uh, at the moment, uh, influencers who have transformed themselves as in generic scenario as COVID has brought us to. So those are the ones are experiencing the maximum viewership from the audience. And coming back to why brands should choose this option, it's very, very clear. We have talked about it, that the brands have chosen this only because, number one, there are multiple ways you can actually reach out to your audience. Let's imagine we had somebody in the audience who was a who has a bakery. Let's understand this, guys. Uh, Swiggy, or let's say any other option on the food side, is currently delivering food items, but very carefully they are sanitizing a lot of and taking a lot of all the measures. Let's understand, if you could move your bakery items to a bunch of influencers at their house with the care and intensive sanitization that is required, and if you can make sure that you can make your product reach at their door, and these influencers end up making a series of content, or let's say let's understand that if you could make them do a short video series about your product, it is going to reach not just the audience around you, but your brand becomes much, much bigger overnight. And another part of this, I would like to also, categorically put it out, is brands have a superpower using influencers in this moment, because the number of internet users at the moment is at all-time high. And let's say that you were in a business that isn't working out anymore because of COVID, there are high likely chances that it is high time you diversify yourself as a business and use influencers to make that announcement. And influencers' announcement will definitely be taken seriously, because it's not a brand making that announcement. It's a third person talking about your business, and essentially brings up some level of conformity that a third person talking about another business on their platform to their audience is definitely going to make a lot of credibility for a brand and for the coming times. Let's just say an event which was cancelled due to COVID has a high likely chances to activate the chances of a relapse that they can do with their audience. Let's say a music artist was supposed to play in the month of April, but could not because of COVID. That artist can do live sessions and tell people that this is just a trailer, and prep up yourself. Once the world is out and once the curve is flattened, we will be out on the streets in whatever capacity, in whatever measures. We will come together and attend this and have a great time. So what I'm only trying to emphasize is that this does not allow us to even take a break to connect with your audience. The answer is that the audience is all time high on internet, and if you can engage yourself with influencers, there is no better opportunity than now to use influencers and propagate your brand advocacy with them.
No, that was great. So, Nitin, one of the thoughts, and this is one question which came from before we started the conference, was around the entire thought of how much does it cost? How cost effective is influencer marketing versus other
Mhm.
modes of marketing? What budget can I start with? So, what what's your thought around that? And do you want to actually give an approach to plan a budget and where to
Mhm.
start, how to spend, what should they expect? We have
Okay.
people who are very diverse community, right from Bhavna, who does bags and her focus is in the international markets, to what
Mhm.
I understand, and to we have Nikesh, who does bakery, a very very elite, high upmarket bakery products. Uh,
Mhm.
so give your thoughts around that, please.
So it's very interesting to understand, how the budgets are actually considered in this context and during COVID. Let me tell you, first of all, it is much more easier to approach an influencer than any other time, because everybody's sitting at home. Even if you email them, even if you DM them, there are high chances that they will respond to you than any other time, because most of the time these influencers travel, they have their managers, and then it just gets into a big loop of their availability, and it just goes over a big transitional acceptability from a brand perspective, whether should we do it and whether should we go ahead with this guy or not. Coming back to your question, Ashish, so there are multiple facets to how influencers actually expect you to look after their remuneration. One of them is a barter opportunity. A barter opportunity is something that has faded over time, because these influencers have taken their career super serious, and this has become full time for them. And anybody just selling them free cakes or free bags is not going to cut it for them any longer. What is possible is that you can negotiate with them, and you can very well negotiate with a barter. You can definitely give them some kind of arrangement wherein you tell them that, look, first of all, I like to send you my bakery product, and then if you like it, then only we would like to talk to understand whether you would be in to advocate this or not. Please understand this, guys. Do not rush with influencers, because a lot of influencers have actually taken up projects that they do not believe in. Make your influencer believe in your product, and please understand this, that whenever you do a commercial negotiation with them, there is something called a minimum deliverable, and that minimum deliverable could be, let's say, a post on Instagram, or a video session on YouTube, or let's just say a live session on Instagram, or a story, a swipe up to your landing page with a brand hashtag or a brand mention. So all of these actually come at a very predefined manner, which is your minimum deliverables. If you make that influencer believe in your product, trust me on that, there is going to be much more that is coming your way beyond that you agree with them. Because once that influencer loves your brand, they are going to do much more beyond what you decide to do on a particular transactionable amount. That could be their fee. I mean, that fee is what is called in the market as talent fee. So that talent fee could be, let's just say, if somebody is charging you 10,000 rupees for a post for just doing one thing, this is the moment. In these times, these are fairly negotiable, because everybody sitting at home is wanting to make money, and these people are in the business to make money, and they have an audience, and they have built an audience over the years, just so that they can leverage on their audience and make a living out of their profession. So, to give you a much clear perspective here to the audience, this is the time to negotiate right, and do it right with a bunch of barters in place, because nobody would mind a free gift, but just a gift is not going to make it happen for you, because these influencers have become a full-time career. They have taken a full-time career choice about it, and as we understand, uh, it's very much possible. Like, if you choose to take up the subject with a bunch of influencers, you must not forget that it is no rocket science. First of all, what is difficult is managing these people, but approaching these people is super easy. As a brand, they prefer to do it with a brand or without a brand, or a third person coming in between, like us. So I would recommend all of you, after the call, if you have second opportunity to do it as yourself, please do not hesitate, because everybody as influencers are readily available, and they would love to listen to you as a brand if you're serious, and if they love your product. Uh, yeah, that's about it. The influencers
Okay.
have to
So,
be
yeah.
believing into what you do, first of all.
So, Nitin,
Yeah.
again, one of the thoughts which comes to my mind is, which is the most important lever in any growth, and especially when startups invest, they talk of something called an ROI,
Yeah.
which in typically in the organic traffic, or whether it's pay per click, or whether it's Facebook marketing or Insta marketing or any other sorts of
Hmm.
marketing, it's
Hmm.
fairly evident. I put in this
Hmm.
money, I get these many leads, and
Yeah.
I calculate the conversion, and I can actually influence is quite a broader term, and you really
Yeah.
don't know. It's like a soaking effect. So you put
Yeah.
in, the influencer puts in a post today, and someone has a subconscious mind and kind of recalls in 15 days, 20 days, and there's no way
Hmm.
for you to attribute that. So how does
Yeah.
someone calculate the ROI on that investment, uh, considering, it's a fair bit of money which goes in?
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting, interesting. So here are two aspects to your question. So one is that how do you measure what influencer brings to you? I think that's what we are talking about. So there are two aspects to it. One is a performance-driven campaign, and one is a visibility-driven campaign. So sometimes what happens is that influencer in their own capacity are able to expose your brand to, let's say, a million audience that they have gathered over the years. Or sometimes a brand is very rigid and very uptight about the spend that they do, because every penny they spend on marketing, they're very conscious of. So in that scenario, what happens is that there are certain hybrids of such models which comes under a category called performance driven campaigns, and those campaigns can be enabled by making something enticing for the audience of the influencer. Let's say, let me give you an example. If you consider that there are influencers that you follow, or let's say, I think influencer is becoming more of a slang in the market right now. It's better to use creators. Creators are the ones who put the pieces of content out for us. So creators, I think for benefit of understanding, we would use creator as along this conversation. So creators have you know, found a way over the years, which has now becoming very popular, which is called giveaways. So you're going to find a connection or a bridge between the brand and the consumer. So once the brand is ready to offer something to the consumer via influencer, the chances of your retention is higher, the chances of your call to action is higher. And for all we understand that if there is a click or a link in play, we can very well measure as to if somebody wants to get their app downloaded. Let's say you can actually put a tab on a consumer, sorry, not consumer. You can put a tab on your influencer that I am willing to pay you, let's say, 1 lakh rupees, and out of this 1 lakh rupees, my expectation is that you get me 5,000 mobile downloads. How about that? There are chances that influencers are going to say that, hey, I'm going to do my best to get your brand out there, but this is little tricky because taking up an amount to fulfill answer to your investment is a tricky one, because sometimes what happens is that lot of brands actually are very very particular about that scenario. So there are two scenarios. I'm going to wrap it up quickly, answer this question. There are two scenarios. One of them is impressions. If you're just particular about making your brand aware in the market, so what you could measure your ROI on is the number of impressions you get out of that content and number of engagements you get out of that content. And secondly, you can on the hindsight, if you just make it a very clear performance-oriented campaign, you can attach a link which can be measured through multiple third-party tools. And influencer takes up a responsibility. Let's say, for example, if I'm given a responsibility to get a brand 5,000 downloads after an investment of 10,000 rupees, then I would have an understanding with the influencers that let's understand your stats. Your stats say that X number of, let's say, 30% of your users swipe up on every story that you put up. And how likely are they going to take your messaging seriously? Let's just say that in a window of influencer campaign, which could be, let's say, as short as a day or to 48 hours, we could bind a influencer for a longer duration. I think that is where a brand can play smart. They can sign a long-term contract with an influencer with a dedicated amount, saying and asking for an outcome which is performance oriented. So let's just say in this scenario, what we could understand that this 5,000 downloads that a brand expects from an influencer can be delivered during, let's just say, a week's time. So what happens in the scenario from a actionable outcome perspective, that influencer, like in the other scenario, would just do one swipe up or give you one description link mention. They would instead do multiple shout outs for the brand, so that there are high likely chances that I miss out. I might end up missing out influencer swipe up story. I might be busy watching something else or doing something else in life. So let's say on day 3, I arrive on my influencer's feed and I end up finding the same swipe up. It might just come across that the retention of that performance is highly possible that I, as an individual consumer that missed out earlier, might end up connecting on that messaging that influencer is trying to broadcast to me as a consumer. So so to give you a quick perspective, number one is awareness perspective. In awareness, it's a clear understanding that impressions, engagement, and everything else that the brand wants to achieve is what you can understand from the stats of the influencer. So the stats of the influencer are highly in question right now, because most of them have actually bought followers, and most of them actually do have a face value as to what they come across as. But the real picture is in the insight section. Once an influencer exposes you the insight section, that is when you understand what is the capacity and capability of an influencer to actually add value to your brand, and also give you some ROI projections as to if you talk about just awareness or versus as we talk about performance. So performance is something that you have to lock it down to an influencer, that this is what I want. These are the number of registrations I want. These are the number of signups I want. These are the number of downloads I want, or maybe these are the number of transactions I want. So based on that, the influencers themselves understand their audience so well, because this is their job. This is not a brand's job to tell them what is right and what is not. I want to make a statement in this conversation. Please understand this very carefully, guys. Influencers or creators, they make content for their audience. They do not make content for the brand. So this is something where brands tend to become very pushy. Do this, do that. Influencer knows their job really well. That is why they connect with their audience. They engage with their audience really, really, in a very deep level. So it's leave that job to them. You just make your deliverables or outcome results very clear to them. And once they agree with that, I think you are in a very happy place, because once you have found out a great connect or a great find to a influencer who is perfect for your brand to talk about their story, I think that's only going to go upward and onwards for yourself, to realize that that connection is going to be far more deeper than a brand making it directly with a consumer.
Thanks, Nitin. Thanks, Nitin. I think that was useful. I think let's move on to some questions from the people on the call right now. Atishay has a question saying that what are the parameters to decide an influencer for your business?
Mm-hmm.
And I would recommend everybody else who are on the call, if you can then put your questions on the chat box, and we'll probably get Nitin to answer some of those. So the question from Atisha again, restating again, what are the parameters to decide an influencer for your business?
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. So Atishay, what I understand is that the parameters have to be predefined by yourself, and you need to understand what are you dealing with, first of all, and where is your audience. And sometimes what happens is that the choice of influencers that you do can really backfire. And in that context, what happens is that I think we have. Okay, cool. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are. You are.
Great, awesome. So what I was saying is that it's very important and very prudent to first of all measure what your influencer's audience is capable of, because essentially what happens is that a bad pick on your influencer choice can really flatten out the outcome that you want to achieve. So to give you a perspective, there are multiple bunch of tools on internet. One of them is Social Blade. We ourselves have an internal in-house mechanism to look after the insights of what the influencer hold as a demographic, as an audience, what are the keywords they use, how frequently do they talk about brands, and what you also need to understand, is that do not pick an influencer who is doing influencing brands left, right, center. Every second, third post should not be endorsing a brand, because that brings in a credibility issue of the influencer that they're just doing it for the money and they have nothing to do, no love, care, anything for the brand. And you have to choose an influencer who is very, very clean on their content and does the job very subtly. If you have somebody who's just farting on the face and just trying to give a perspective that buy this, buy this, buy this right now, please stay away from such people. And that's what I would recommend whenever you are shortlisting or choosing an influencer by yourself. Trust the process, that it's not an overnight game, and it is something that requires a lot of patience. This is something that I'm telling you from experience, that a lot of our clients become very, very conscious that I did this right now and nothing is happening. So, it's not an overnight gig. Give it some time. Minimum 3 months is what I would recommend if you talk about the outcomes. And a lot of the biggest brands are a case study to that context, to give you a perspective that people have realized that influencers are the way forward. And this is only the rise and the times that we are in right now. This is, in fact, no better time to kind of activate yourself with influencers and be very conscious. Watch out for the people that you pick up to endorse your brand. So that's my piece of advice to you.
Okay, so Nitin, we have got a few questions from Nikesh, so I'll take one by one. So for the first
Sure.
one, being, for a local brand, is it possible
Mhm.
to geographically target influencer marketing?
Absolutely. Look, all of us are influencers. Let me tell you, first of all, Ashish, you are quite an influencer yourself in your community. All of us have a small audience. Let's not underestimate the power of micro influencers. So what I would like to, in fact, give ourselves an understanding is that a micro market has a very small radius, which could be, let's talk about a restaurant, which has a radius of 5 kilometers. In this context, what you need to cater to is the people, the community, in fact, find out someone famous who is in your area, because their inner circle is definitely going to be impacted by their life choices. If they put it out on the social media, let's just say that if I love Kevinters, for example, and people around me, let's say my Facebook connections, let's say I have 500 people, I am an influencer in their perspective. If I make a post saying I am enjoying this beautiful glass of Kevinters right now, and this is just brightening up my day as I take a sip. So everybody is an influencer. So do not underestimate the power of micro influencers, because uh, they in fact have a much more meaningful credibility attached to themselves, because nobody expects them to actually endorse a product on the social media. It's the big people that we expect that influencer profile or Instagram profile or a YouTuber is going to talk about a brand. But if a macro person with a small community size talks about a brand on LinkedIn, let's say LinkedIn is a great platform. So if you have anybody talking about a relevant industry, this is where you got to be very, very conscious that a small ability of connecting a short size of audience is always, always powerful and advisable.
So I think one of the question was centered around this only, which says that macro versus micro, what gives the better ROI?
Mhm. Okay, interesting one. In fact, macro any day would have a much larger reach because if you talk about making a big announcement, any day macro would be the best choice of a brand. Uh, you know, but when you play it right, a macro is definitely going to charge you a bomb. A macro is going to be charging you something that possibly in the immediate capacity as a brand you might not want to take a risk, but micro has the potential power to play on barter. So barter is something that as a brand you could afford because you are making a consumer in the process. So as whosoever ends up using your product becomes your consumer, and that consumer ends up talking about to their audience and their network, and this is a very good mix that they can. I mean, as a brand, anybody can enable themselves and activate a bunch of new consumers because uh, over a period of time we've noticed that a lot of brands actually believe to go the route of micro influencers only because of a reason, because the macro people are the ones who have zero trust, or rather, if I could, in simple words, if I could put it up, Ranveer Kapoor or Ranbir Kapoor, rather, like let's just talk about celebrities right now. They endorse every passing product uh, on our observation, like anything that we come across, any mobile phones, any car, or anything else. If they talk about anything that's moving in the real world, people tend to just take it as an advertisement now. Gone are the days when Amitabh Bachchan would be like talking about Navratan Thanda Thanda Cool Cool because it is a great product, but coming to think of it, the guy himself is is not using it, so it does not make any relevance for a brand to talk about taking the brand message through a macro guy. So a micro person right now in the market is a top level preference to go for, and it is cost effective and it definitely works. I could tell you that from a bunch of campaigns that we run internally, it is becoming a big high demand of consumers who hold themselves anywhere close. I'm just going to give you a very simple number. Uh, Anybody with 5,000 followers on Instagram today is not a normal guy, and anybody who says I have 50,000 followers has definitely bought followers, because 50,000 followers on Instagram is no joke. Anybody sitting with 1,000 followers on Instagram is still holding much power with his 1,000 followers. So do not underestimate micro influencers. They are super, super, super effective.
So one of the question I think, Nitin, is can you give some non-tech examples of influencer marketing B2B space?
Well, B2B is a very interesting, place to kind of identify where influencers actually take a shape up. LinkedIn is a platform where in the recent times there's a campaign that I would like to in fact bring it out for our relevance, which is Zoom. Zoom calls is definitely being talked about by a bunch of LinkedIn people, subtly, non-subtly. Maybe some people are really casting it out, saying that we use Zoom. For all we know, that there were a bunch of people who never knew of the existence of Zoom. Now understand that. In fact, in B2B segment, what has also happened is that this is an old scenario that people used to experiment, that bringing a celebrity into their corporate events, like dealership meets used to be earlier facilitated by the appearance of stars, the big celebrities used to show up for a few minutes, lighting up the mood of people. But now that has taken up a different notion because uh, a B2B segment has chosen to go social, digitally social, wherein people endorse on Quora. Quora is another platform, as all of us would know, that people of businesses prefer to read up and Google up. And Quora is one of the most preferred solution or destination where people end up finding out solutions. And so is LinkedIn. LinkedIn has become quite a platform where so there is one more module that I would like to share with you is where content is created and then you sponsor that content. Imagine a LinkedIn guy made a short video for their audience, and if that audience is just limited to a very broad perspective, it might not be relevant. But if the brand can capture that content piece and run ads to a targeted audience, it might just as well be a very good ROI for a brand to take it from a B2B perspective.
I think that's very helpful. I think I thoroughly enjoyed this discussion, to be honest, and learned a lot about why influencer marketing is becoming a preferred choice for a lot of marketers today, and especially startups, because considering the current situation. One, as we close, I think if anybody has any more questions, last minute, I see Bhavna, Chitransh, Omar on the call as well, and Atisha, you've been participating. So if you guys have any closing remarks, comments, questions for Nitin, please do ping on chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask Nitin. Okay, so it looks like people have got most of it in terms of what they were looking for. And once again, thank you so much, Nitin, for joining in. I really appreciate you taking time and answering some of the questions. And I think we got Bhavna back. Bhavna, do you have any question for Nitin? Okay, so they will probably reach out to you separately if they need any support, any help, and probably want to engage with Wiregram for any support in doing influencer marketing. Once again, thank you so much, and it was wonderful speaking to you. And look forward to influence the market. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ashish. And I would actually like to leave the audience with the last a quick note from my side. Is this is the time to reactivate your audience. And if you think that you are going to wait until the times are back where and how it used to be earlier, I think they are losing out. Whosoever wants to, as a brand, wants to recalibrate, relapse, and reactivate. Reactivate is the key word that I would like to leave my audience uh, with. Reactivate your brand is the answer with influencer marketing during the COVID times. And by the time you see your brand, your audience going out and using your products, they will they will be far more connected with you than ever before.
Thanks, Nitin. Bye.
Thank you so much, Ashish. Bye bye.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, guys.
Nitin sir, I have a question.
Oh wow, we have a question. Great.
Yeah. So I'm so sorry for the last minute question.
No, bring it. I'm more than excited.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for your session. It was really an icebreaker because I'm a Chitransh friend, so that's how I got in the meeting. So yeah, so I know a very little about influencer marketing, but I really connected to the points you said, and you mentioned like how brand ambassadors are not as powerful as the influencers in today's time. So if my business is a brick and mortar type of business and it's not it's not present digitally, so what should be the roadmap according to you to make it more aware and bring it to the public in a digital space?
Interesting. What is your business all about, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, sure. So it's actually not my business. I'm still studying, but it's my father's business, and which is what I would like to join in the
Mm-hmm.
current near future. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
wholesaler and retailer business wherein he
Mm-hmm.
deals with products of army and plastics which are used for trucks for carriage purposes.
Okay.
Yeah. So would it?
Wow,
Yeah.
that's great. So,
So
what I understand that you are asking very categorically and very clearly about something which is retail and wholesale
true.
as a market. Great. So, I think what you're going to do is get together a bunch of your existing uh, distributors
Yeah.
and hold an event
Mm-hmm.
and invite few influencers and make content and get them to click selfies with them, because sometimes what happens is that the arm party, or like not the arm army party, I mean the
Yeah.
arm janta is sometimes fascinated with anybody famous. So if you can hold up a small event for the distributors and the dealers that your business is into, get a celebrity or a YouTuber or a Instagrammer to arrive at the event and let them get a moment of their life to click pictures with them, so that uh, within their network, within their community, it becomes a moment to cherish, a moment to remember, and they establish a much deeper connection with your services, because once you look after people and once you look after their fantasies of people is to kind of live a life or maybe get down to an experience that they might not have ever experienced. So that is what you could line up in your capacity, in your small size of establishment, or however big it is. I wish you all the best. And my suggestion to you is a close network, a close circle event, and inviting an influencer or famous person that people that your circuit is far more conducive about. So I think that is going to take your brand from an influencer marketing perspective, on ground event perspective, or for all we know, in the COVID times that is not possible. Make an artist to live perform for your distributors on a Zoom link or any other event, or use Hangouts to at least tell them that we are watching out and we just wanted to do this as a token of appreciation, as a token of taking your our relationship into context, and we want to bring this out a piece of entertainment from this artist just for you guys.
All right, sir. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Yeah. That was really helpful.
Thank you so much. All right, guys. I hope if there is any more question, I'm happy to take. But as we have already covered most of the subjects, I would like to thank everyone and Ashish most importantly. I hope he's on the line listening this. And thank
Gosh.
you so much, Bhavna, and thank you so much, Omar, for being on the line. And I wish you all the best for the coming times. These COVID times are tough, but the best part about this is this gives us a lot of preparation before we step out. So this time, if you yourself want to become an influencer, this is the best time, guys. This is the best time to become influencers if you want to pick up a niche or subject that you feel, because it all starts from zero. All the big peoples, all the big celebs who have become and have had the number of followers they've had, it all starts from zero. So if you want to choose to become and look up to the people that you follow, there is no better time than right now.
Thanks a lot, sir, for your time.
Thank you, much appreciated. How does one market B2B internationally? Noted. LinkedIn. Okay, great. Cool. Any other questions? So let me just have a look at the number of questions I might have missed out in the Nikesh had a question. Like Coldplay, very true. Atishay, yes. Bhavna, you have a question. I think that's been discussed. Anything else, Bhavna, we can talk about quickly, or else we are good. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate the time that you have allowed me to speak up and bring this version of my knowledge and information about the subject. I'll see you guys on the other side whenever next we catch up. Until then, peace out. Take care.